Most men, when they reach the end of what they can take, pour themselves a rye and go to bed. I reached the end of mine and called a family law attorney from a Tim Hortons parking lot off the 401 at 2 in the morning. But we'll get to that. Wednesday, February 19th, Elora, Ontario, 10:52 p.m. I was in my armchair with a hockey game on that I couldn't have told you the score of if you'd offered me money. My knees were giving me their usual February opinion, the way they do when the cold settles into the concrete and comes right through the walls. My wife Brenda passed 6 years ago, and I still kept the TV going just for the noise. Old habit I hadn't been able to shake. My phone lit up on the side table, Olive Hutchins. Now, Olive is 74 years old, and she lives 3 houses down from my son Jeremy's place on Millbrook Crescent in Guelph. She brought me butter tarts the week after Brenda's funeral, and she still calls every couple of weeks to complain about the city's snow clearing schedule. She is not a woman who phones past 9 o'clock unless something has gone wrong. I answered before the second ring. Olive? Wendell. Her voice had that careful quality you only hear when someone is trying very hard not to alarm you while simultaneously doing exactly that. I'm sorry to call so late. I wouldn't. Except I think you need to know. I sat up straight. The game went to commercial. I didn't notice. I've been watching Jeremy's house, she said. Something felt off. I saw Maya in the window yesterday afternoon, just standing at the glass. Alone. I knocked this evening and she answered the door herself, Wendell, in her socks and her school hoodie. It was past 7 o'clock. I didn't say anything. I asked her where her mother was. She said her parents took Tyler to his hockey tournament in Quebec, said they left on Sunday. Olive paused. That's 3 days, Wendell. I asked if anyone was looking in on her, and she said a girl from up the street was supposed to come, but she'd only come once, Sunday night, and hadn't come back since. I could hear Olive pressing her hand over the phone, steadying herself. She asked me something before I left. She asked if you knew, Wendell. That was the first thing out of her mouth. Does Grandpa know? I was already on my feet, knees and all. Don't go anywhere, Olive, I'm coming. I called Maya before I even had my coat on. The phone rang once. Just the one time, like she had been sitting right next to it in the dark with nothing to do but wait. Grandpa? Lord, that voice. 9 years old and already sounding like someone who had quietly accepted that patience was safer than hope. Hey, sweetheart, you all right? A small pause. I think so. 9 years old and already hedging, already editing herself to protect someone else from the full weight of her answer. Maya, listen to me. Is the front door locked? Yes. Good girl. Have you eaten tonight? I had some crackers, and there's cereal, but I've been kind of saving it because I wasn't sure. She stopped, cut herself off like she'd said too much. She'd been rationing crackers. In a house with a full kitchen, a 9-year-old had been rationing food because she didn't know when someone was coming back. Pack your backpack, I said. My voice was steady. I'm still proud of how steady it was, because nothing else about me was. Your rabbit, your favorite sweater, whatever books you want. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Silence, then very quietly, Grandpa? Yeah, sweetheart. Did I do something wrong? Because Tyler got to go to the tournament, and I asked Mum if I could come too, and she said it was too far. And then when they were packing, I asked Dad if I could at least go to your place, and he said the babysitter would be more fun. Her voice went smaller. My birthday was 2 weeks ago. They got me a gift card. I just keep thinking maybe I did something. I stood in my front hallway with one boot on and the other in my hand. And I made a decision. Not an emotional one, not a reactive one, a clean, quiet, permanent decision about exactly how the next several weeks were going to go for my son Jeremy Garvey. You did not do one single thing wrong, not one. Now pack your rabbit and unlock the front door. Grandpa will be there in 18 minutes. Olive was on the porch steps with a blanket across her knees and Maya tucked in beside her when my headlights swung onto Millbrook Crescent. Maya stood up when she saw the car. Then she ran. Backpack bouncing, rabbit crushed to her chest, still in her socks because she'd forgotten her boots in the hurry and hadn't wanted to take the time to go back for them. She didn't say a word when she reached me, she just grabbed on. I picked her up, 62 pounds of her, and held her in the driveway of my son's house while Olive sat on those porch steps, with her hand pressed flat against her mouth. I tried to sell, Olive said quietly. Yesterday morning, no answer. I carried Maya to the car, buckled her in myself, tucked the blanket around her legs, and handed her back the rabbit she'd dropped getting in. Before I closed the door, Olive touched my arm. Wendell, my neighbor, her daughter-in-law is a family law attorney in Hamilton, Elaine Fisk, Fisk & Associates, King Street West. 20 years and I have never heard a bad word about her. Send me the number, Olive, right now. She already had her phone out. Maya was asleep before we hit the edge of the city. I drove back toward Elora in the dark with the radio off and the heat running and her slow, even breathing from the back seat the only sound in the car. I stopped at a light on Woolwich Street, and I did the thing I'd told myself I wouldn't do. I opened Jeremy's Instagram. Posted at 6:17 that evening, Jeremy and Rhonda and Tyler at an arena in Quebec City, all three of them in red team colors, Tyler holding his stick up like he'd just won something important. Rhonda had her arm around Jeremy, both of them grinning the way people grin when they have not left a 9-year-old girl alone in a house in Guelph, Ontario for 3 days with a bag of crackers and a stuffed rabbit for company. Caption, so proud of this kid, family time in Quebec, worth every penny. The light turned green. I didn't move. The car behind me honked. Worth every penny. I thought about the crackers she'd been rationing. I thought about her voice on the phone, cutting herself off, already managing how much she asked for so nobody would feel burdened. The car behind me honked again, longer this time. Yeah, me too, buddy. Me too. I got Maya settled into the guest room with the lamp on low, a glass of water on the nightstand, and her rabbit beside her on the pillow. I sat on the edge of the bed until her breathing went slow and even. Then I went to the kitchen table, poured a cup of coffee I absolutely didn't need, opened my laptop, and started writing everything down. Every date, every detail, everything Maya had said word for word, Olive's account, the Instagram post, the timestamp on every missed call. I am a retired electrician, 67 years old. I wire things properly and I document what I've done, because a job without documentation is just a job waiting to go wrong. At 1:43 in the morning, Olive's message came through. Elaine Fisk, Fisk & Associates, King Street, West Hamilton. I saved it. Then I opened a new browser tab and started looking at resorts in Muskoka. Because here is the thing about being a grandfather in Elora, Ontario, who just drove across town at 11 o'clock at night to collect his 9-year-old granddaughter from an empty house where she'd been alone for 3 days. You do not get angry. You get organized. If you've been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Like the video while you're at it, and drop your thoughts in the comments after you're done. You're going to like it here. By 3 in the morning, I had a 4-night stay booked at a resort on Lake Rosseau, a suite with a fireplace and a view of the water. I'd also sent an email to Elaine Fisk's office that read simply, "My name is Wendell Garvey." My 9-year-old adopted granddaughter was left alone for 3 days, while her parents took their biological son to a hockey showcase in Quebec. I need to understand every legal option available to me, Wendell. Then I called Jeremy. 3:24 a.m. I knew he wouldn't answer and I didn't want him to. I wanted him to roll over in his hotel room in Quebec City the next morning, reach for his phone and find a voicemail waiting for him like a piece of registered mail he hadn't asked for. The beep sounded. "Hey, son." My voice was calm, almost warm even. "Just wanted to let you know I've got Maya. She's safe and she's with me. We're going on a little trip ourselves. Hope the tournament's going well." I paused just long enough. "We'll talk when you're home." I hung up, walked down the hall, checked on Maya one more time. She was curled around her rabbit with her face completely relaxed. No tension anywhere in it, no watchfulness. She looked like what she was, a child. Just a child who should have been sleeping in her own bed 4 nights ago. I went back to the kitchen and sat with my cold coffee and thought about what the next 10 days were going to look like for Jeremy Garvey. I had documentation, I had an attorney's email sitting in her inbox, I had a lake in Muskoka with Maya's name on the reservation, and my son had absolutely no idea. Thursday, February 20th, Elora, Ontario, 6:48 a.m. I was on my second cup when Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, in her socked feet, hair going in several directions at once, rabbit dangling from one hand, looking at me like she was still deciding whether last night had actually happened. "Grandpa, why are you already dressed?" "Because we've got somewhere to be, sweetheart." She blinked. "Where?" "Lake Rosseau up in Muskoka. You and me, we check in this afternoon." She stood completely still, the way a person does when they're afraid to want something too much in case it disappears. Then she screamed and ran back down the hallway to get her backpack, and I sat at my kitchen table in Elora and smiled into my coffee for the first time in 12 hours. That sound? Right there. That was the whole thing. That was everything this was for. Friday, February 21st, Lake Rosseau, Muskoka, 11:10 a.m. I want to be honest about something. I am a 67-year-old man from Elora who drives a GMC half-ton and considers the Swiss chalet on Stone Road a perfectly adequate special occasion. I do not do suites with fireplaces. I do not do lake views through floor-to-ceiling windows or turn down service or room service menus with no prices on them. But when the woman at the front desk opened the door to our room and the afternoon light came off the ice on Lake Rosseau and hit every surface in that room at once, I decided I had been missing out on floor-to-ceiling windows for most of my adult life. Maya walked in behind me. She stopped, both hands at her sides. Rabbit in her left fist, she stood looking at the frozen lake like she was trying to establish whether it was real. Very quiet. Is this ours? For 4 days it is. She turned to look at me. Can I try the balcony door? In February in Muskoka, you're welcome to try. She went for the handle with the full commitment of someone who does not do things halfway. It took her 3 attempts. When the cold came rushing in, she shrieked and slammed it shut immediately, and then dissolved into the best laugh I had heard from her in months. Possibly longer. I hadn't noticed it was missing until I heard it come back. The next 4 days I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Day 1, skating on the resort's outdoor rink. Maya had never been on skates before. She had lived in Guelph, Ontario for 4 years, and nobody had ever put that girl on skates. The rink attendant, a patient teenage boy, spent 20 minutes holding her hands and walking her slowly around the boards while she concentrated with the focus of a person performing surgery. By the afternoon, she was making her way around on her own, arms wide, face absolutely serious. By the time we went in for hot chocolate, she had lapped me twice and was not being quiet about it. Day 2. A snowshoe trail through the birch stands along the lakeshore. The resort guide knew every tree by name, and Maya asked her questions faster than she could answer them. What's that bird? Why is that tree white? How thick does ice have to be before it holds you? Has it ever not held someone? The guide looked at me at one point with an expression of pure delight. I shrugged. I'd been on the receiving end of those questions since Maya was 6. Day 3. The indoor pool. Maya went down the water slide so many times I lost count somewhere past 20. She recruited the lifeguard to time her laps. She was objectively terrible. She stood at the edge of the pool afterward in her goggles and reported her time to me with the gravity of an Olympic athlete. I told her that was very fast. She looked at me like she suspected I wasn't being entirely truthful, but decided to accept it anyway. I took photographs every day, posted one on Facebook. Maya in her snowshoes on the lake trail, bundled from chin to boots, grinning so wide her eyes had almost disappeared. Caption: my granddaughter on her first snowshoe trail. She asked every question worth asking. I knew Jeremy would see it. I posted it anyway. Call it information, call it a preview of coming attractions, call it a grandfather who had quietly run out of patience for being the kind of person who stays silent. But here's the part nobody saw. Every evening, after Maya fell asleep, I took my phone out to the balcony, closed the sliding door quietly behind me, pulled the resort blanket around my shoulders against the cold, and called Elaine Fisk. 9 o'clock, sharp every time. Elaine Fisk does not do small talk. In 20 years of family law, she has apparently exhausted her full supply somewhere around 2009 and has nothing remaining, which suited me completely. First night. Tell me everything from the beginning. Dates and times. Don't interpret. Just give me what happened. I talked for 35 minutes. She interrupted 3 times, each time to nail down a specific timestamp. When I finished, she was quiet, the kind of quiet that means someone is thinking, rather than waiting for their turn to speak. What you're describing has a legal name under Ontario law, she said. Leaving a child under the age of 10 without adequate supervision for more than 24 hours falls within the scope of the Child, Youth and Family Services Act. This is not a gray area. Your neighbor's eyewitness account is significant. Direct, first-hand testimony from an adult with no personal stake in the outcome is exactly what carries weight. I gripped the balcony railing and looked at the Black Lake. What are we pursuing? 3 things simultaneously. Legally defined grandparent access rights, court-ordered and enforceable. A formal report to the Children's Aid Society, documented and detailed, supported by school records. And a motion for review of the home environment as it relates to the child's welfare. I'll need her school records as soon as possible. Behavioral changes, attendance, any flags from teachers or the school's social worker. Will Maya have to go through anything difficult in this process? Elaine's voice didn't waver, not if I do my job, and I always do my job. I believed her completely. Second night, Elaine walked me through the financial side. I had already made up my mind, but I wanted it done correctly, and I wanted it done quickly. She explained the structure. The Elora house, the investment accounts, and the piece of lands outside of Fergus that my father worked himself hollow to buy. Now directed into an irrevocable trust established solely for Maya, to be released on her 21st birthday, managed by an independent trustee, administered by Fisk and Associates. And RESP in her name, already registered, already funded. Not a gesture, a wall. Once it's filed and registered, it cannot be reversed, Elaine said. Not by your son, not by his wife, not by any attorney they care to retain. How quickly can you have it ready? I'll have the documents drafted before you land back in Elora. Third night, that was the one I wasn't prepared for. I was on the balcony going through Maya's school records, which her teacher had forwarded at my request. 2 years of notes. A documented shift in her engagement around mid-grade 2. A flag from the school's social worker 8 months ago that Jeremy and Rhonda had been informed of in writing, had acknowledged, and had done nothing about. The balcony door slid open behind me. Maya, standing in the doorway in her pajamas, squinting at the cold rabbit hanging from one hand like she'd forgotten it was there. Grandpa, who are you talking to? I covered the phone. A work call, sweetheart, go back to bed. She considered this with the full seriousness of a federal judge reviewing a complex file. Can I have a hot chocolate from the machine in the hall? There are packets on the dresser and a kettle. The machine makes it better. Maya, I am on an important call. I know. She held her free hand out, palm up, $2. I looked at her for exactly 1 second. Then I reached into my coat pocket and handed her a toonie. She took it, disappeared back inside without further discussion, and I returned to Elaine. Sorry about that 9-year-old interruption. A pause. And I will go to my grave convinced I detected something underneath Elaine Fisk's perfectly calibrated professional voice. Not warmth exactly, the suggestion of it. The outline, I heard. She sounds considerably better than those school reports indicate. She really does, Elaine. Good. The contrast between her documented decline over the past 2 years and her current emotional state in your care is going to matter significantly in front of a judge. That distinction is not nothing. I wrote that down word for word. But it was dinner on the 4th night that I genuinely was not ready for. White tablecloths in the resort dining room, candles. The kind of place that brings bread before you have fully settled into your chair. Maya was eating her first beef tenderloin and providing a detailed running commentary on every component, ultimately and formally declaring the mashed potatoes the greatest thing that had ever happened to her, including and specifically the water slide. I was watching her and thinking, this is what she looks like when nobody is asking her to be less than she is. And then she put her fork down, went quiet, looked at the white tablecloth for a long moment. Then she looked up at me with those dark eyes. Grandpa, am I adopted because nobody wanted to keep me the first time? The dining room kept moving around us, silverware clinking somewhere behind me, a family laughing at the bar, a waiter listing the dessert specials at the next table in a low, practiced voice. But right there at that table, everything had stopped. I set my fork down slowly. I reached across the white tablecloth and I took both her small hands in mine, and I told her the truth. All of it, carefully, honestly, at exactly the level that a 9-year-old girl who had been asking real questions her entire life deserved to have them answered. I told her what adoption means, and more importantly, what it does not mean. I told her that being chosen is not second place, it is not a consolation, it is its own whole thing. I told her that her birth mother was very young and very frightened, and that what she did was not the same as not caring. I told her she had been loved before she ever arrived at that house on Millbrook Crescent, and she would be loved long after she left it. I told her that I had driven across Guelph in the dark, booked this room, sat on this frozen lake in February, because there was not a single version of events in which I was going to allow anyone to make her feel like something that happened to a family by accident. Her eyes went bright. She nodded slowly, taking each word in with that serious, careful face she gets when something actually matters to her. Then she looked at the bread basket. Can I have more bread? You can have all of it. And the chocolate thing they described for dessert? Order 2. She smiled, the small one first, then the real one, the one that starts slow and makes its way up to her eyes and just stays there. I excused myself after dessert, walked to the men's room, ran cold water over my wrists at the sink, and looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. I had held it together at that table because she needed me to. I had been steady and certain and warm because that was what the moment required. But I am only a person. And somewhere in a hotel room in Quebec City, on a trip that had cost $14,000 and counting, my son Jeremy Garvey was sleeping soundly. That specific thought was the one that made me dry my hands, straighten my shirt, walk back out to that dining room, and sit down across from my granddaughter and decide, clearly and without any remaining doubt, that I was finished being quiet. We were going home to Elora, and Elaine Fisk had work to do. If you've made it this far and want stories like this to keep coming, a like and a subscribe mean more than you know. Thank you genuinely. Some things call for a conversation, some things call for a lawyer. Jeremy Garvey needed both, and I made sure he got them. Sunday, March 2nd, Elora, 5:19 p.m. Maya fell asleep on the drive back from Muskoka with her cheek against the window, and her hot chocolate still in her hand, which she somehow did not spill. The March light came flat and pale across the fields outside Barrie, and I drove in quiet and thought about what was waiting at home. Not with dread. With something closer to the calm a person feels when they know exactly what they're walking into and are completely prepared for every version of it. Jeremy had finally responded to my voicemail, not a phone call, not an explanation, a text. 8 words, need to talk, coming home Sunday? Will come by. I forwarded it to Elaine with one line, Monday morning, my place, 9 o'clock. She replied in under 4 minutes, already cleared. Monday, March 3rd, Elora, Ontario, 8:58 a.m. Elaine Fisk arrived 2 minutes early, which I would later learn was as late as she ever arrived anywhere. Charcoal coat, low heels, a leather briefcase that had clearly been in serious rooms before she ever walked into mine. She set her documents on my kitchen table, accepted a coffee without ceremony, and sat down like she had been sitting at that table her entire career. I liked her more every time I saw her. They don't know I'm here? She asked, not looking up from her folder. They think it's a family conversation. The faintest shift at the corner of her mouth? It is, just considerably better documented than they're expecting. Jeremy's truck came into the driveway at 9:04. He walked in first, my son, 39 years old, still carrying a bit of color from a week in Quebec, wearing a jacket I could tell he'd chosen deliberately for this. Underneath the tan, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in 10 days. Not from exhaustion, but from something interior that rest doesn't reach. His wife came in right behind him, chin up, shoulders squared, jaw completely set. She had clearly spent the drive from Guelph building her case, and she arrived here fully armored and ready to present it. Jeremy opened his mouth to speak. Then he saw Elaine. He stopped walking, mid-step. Dad, who is? Jeremy, Rhonda. I kept my voice entirely pleasant. This is Elaine Fisk, family law attorney, 20 years experience, office on King Street in Hamilton. Please sit down. There's coffee. Rhonda's eyes moved from Elaine to me to the open folder on the table and back to Elaine. Something recalculated behind her face. We came here for a family conversation, she said, controlled. Not a... Please sit down, Mrs. Garvey. Elaine's voice was not unkind. It was simply immovable, the way a load-bearing wall is immovable. Rhonda sat. Not because she wanted to, because something in Elaine's tone made the alternative feel like a substantially worse idea. I had experienced that exact quality from a resort balcony over Lake Rosseau, and I understood it precisely. Jeremy sat beside her, hands flat on the table. He still hadn't looked directly at me. He knows. He has known since he listened to my voicemail in Quebec City. He has been carrying it across 2 provinces and 10 days of hotel rooms, and it is sitting right there on his face for anyone paying attention. Elaine opened her folder without drama, no pause, no build-up. She slid a single typed sheet across the table the way you pass the salt. A timeline, clean, complete, merciless. Sunday, February 16th. Jeremy and Rhonda Garvey depart Guelph, Ontario, with Tyler Garvey for hockey showcase in Quebec City. Maya Garvey, age 9, remains at the family residence on Millbrook Crescent without confirmed adult supervision. February 16th through February 19th, Maya Garvey observed alone at residence by neighbor Olive Hutchins. Child confirmed to have rationed crackers and cereal over the duration of this period. No reliable adult supervision confirmed during this time. Wednesday, February 19th, 10:52 p.m., Olive Hutchins contacts Wendell Garvey. Wednesday, February 19th, 11:14 p.m., Wendell Garvey retrieves Maya Garvey from family residence. Jeremy read it. His face did not move a single muscle. Rhonda read it. Her face moved considerably. This is not. We made arrangements. There was a girl from up the street who was supposed to. I'm going to save everyone some time, Elaine said pleasantly. What is documented on that page has a specific legal name under the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act. Leaving a child under the age of 10 without adequate supervision for more than 24 hours meets the threshold for supervisory neglect under Ontario law. We are not here this morning to debate whether it occurred. Mrs. Hutchins has provided a signed written statement. We have time-stamped social media documentation from the period in question. We have the child's own account, properly recorded. We are here to discuss what happens next. She placed a second sheet on the table. Rhonda opened her mouth again. Jeremy put his hand firmly on her arm. She stopped. I noted that, filed it away, the first decisive thing my son had done in any of this, 2 weeks late, but noted. Elaine laid out the situation the way a surgeon operates. Clean, precise, nothing wasted. 3 legal actions drafted and ready to file the moment she walked out of my kitchen. Grandparent access rights, legally defined, court-ordered, non-negotiable in scope. A formal report to the Children's Aid Society, documented and detailed, supported by 2 years of school records including a social worker's flag from 8 months prior that Jeremy and Rhonda had received, acknowledged in writing, and entirely ignored. A motion for review of the home environment as it related to Maya's welfare, supported by documented behavioral changes, teacher records, and the stark contrast between Maya's current emotional state in her grandfather's care and her state in the months prior. With each item Elaine set on the table, Rhonda went through a sequence of colors I had not previously seen on a human face. She arrived at a very specific pale that I recognized as the color of someone running rapid internal calculations and finding no version of the math that works in their favor. Jeremy had not moved. He was looking at the timeline the way a man looks at something he caused. The cast report has been drafted in full, Elaine said. It has not yet been filed. That remains a decision for the next 72 hours. Silence, real silence, the kind that has actual weight. And then Jeremy looked up from that piece of paper and looked at me directly, for the first time since he had walked through my front door. His eyes were red. Dad, just that. My name, carrying the full weight of everything he hadn't said in 2 weeks. A confession, an apology, and a question pressed together into a single syllable. I waited, I gave him nothing. I let him carry the rest of the way on his own. I knew. His voice came out uneven. The whole time I knew. Rhonda said it was one trip, it was a big opportunity for Tyler, we'd more than make it up to Maya when we got back. And I told myself that was true because it was easier then. He stopped. His jaw worked. When we were loading the car, she was in the doorway of her room with her backpack on. Dad, she thought she was coming. She had her backpack on and she was smiling at me. And I told her the babysitter was coming instead. And I watched her face, and I watched her put the backpack back down, and I closed the front door and I got in the car. His voice broke entirely on the last word. Rhonda turned to look at him sharply. He didn't look back at her. He kept his eyes on me, exhausted and red and completely without defense. The room was quiet enough that I could hear the furnace running. I looked at my son for a long moment. The boy I taught to wire a light switch in this very house. The boy I drove to university and cried the entire way back on the 401. The man sitting across from me now who had watched a 9-year-old put her backpack down and driven away anyway. I let myself feel it. Grief, clean and real. For the father I believed I had raised and the man sitting in front of me who had, somewhere along the way, made a choice I was going to spend a long time trying to understand. 3 seconds, then I opened my folder. I know you knew, Jeremy. Quiet, just a statement. That's the part that kept me up. He flinched like I'd touched something that hadn't healed. I slid the folder across the table, my updated will, prepared, reviewed, and formally registered with Elaine's firm the week before, while Maya was losing count of her water slide runs. A significant portion of my estate, the Elora house, the investment accounts, the land outside of Fergus that my father broke himself earning, land that had been in this family for 41 years. All of it now held in an irrevocable trust established solely and permanently for Maya Garvey to be released on her 21st birthday, managed by an independent trustee administered by Fisk and Associates. Irrevocable, done, permanent, sealed tight. And Reskip in Maya's name, already registered and funded while we were sitting in this room, already earning. Rhonda read the first page, set it down, and looked up at me. The armor was entirely gone. What was underneath it was not anger. It was fear. The specific kind that arrives when a person finally understands they have been completely outmaneuvered while they were still deciding how to begin the first conversation. Wendell? You chose who mattered to you, I said. Not loud, not heated, just true, so did I. Nobody spoke. Elaine laid out the resolution terms. 4 conditions, clear, specific, legally binding, and not open for discussion. 1. Maya begins weekly sessions with a registered child therapist within 30 days, all costs covered by the trust. 2. Wendell Garvey receives legally defined access rights, effective immediately. Every other weekend, 2 full weeks each summer, major holidays to be discussed and agreed upon in writing. 3. Jeremy and Rhonda complete a minimum of 6 sessions of family counseling together and individually, documentation of attendance required. 4. The cast report sits sealed in Elaine Fisk's files for 1 full calendar year. Any violation of any single condition, 1 missed session, 1 incident, and it gets filed that same day. No phone call first, no second chance. Filed. Elaine closed her briefcase with a single quiet click. "These are not suggestions," she said pleasantly. Rhonda looked at Jeremy. A whole silent conversation happened between them in about 4 seconds. Then she looked at the table and gave one tight nod. Like it cost her something she wasn't getting back. It did. They signed at 10:47 a.m. Jeremy stood to leave. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, his back to me, one hand resting on the frame. "Is she?" His voice caught slightly. "How is Maya doing?" I let the question sit in the air for a moment, long enough to be felt. "She will be," I said. "No thanks to the two of you, but she will be." He nodded at the doorframe, didn't turn around, walked out. Rhonda followed without a word. The front door clicked shut behind them. 7 months later, October, Elora, Ontario. Maya calls me every Sunday at 5:30. She has not missed a single one. Last Sunday, she talked for 43 minutes without stopping. About her new teacher who lets the class vote on everything, which Maya considers an excellent system. About her therapist, Dr. Beaumont, who Maya says always smells like cinnamon and has a plant in her office that she named Gerald. About the pasta she helped Rhonda make last Tuesday from a recipe she had decided on herself, which she reported was better than Rhonda's version would have been without her involvement. She said this while standing in Rhonda's kitchen. That tells you something about where things are. About Tyler, who 2 months ago on his own and without being asked, came home from a tournament, knocked on Maya's bedroom door and asked if she wanted to play cards. She beat him 3 straight games. He came back the following night to try again. He is 16 years old, and he did not build this situation, and he did not choose it. I have decided to believe the best of him because I watched him try. They adopted Maya 4 years ago during a rough stretch in their marriage, when a counselor suggested fostering might give them something to build toward together. And it had for a while. But when things between them settled back into the old rhythms and Tyler's hockey began consuming everything, Maya became something that didn't fit the shape they had returned to. I am not a therapist. I am not going to pretend I fully understand what happens inside a person that allows that. But I watched it happen to my granddaughter, and I am not going to forget it. Jeremy shows up now. School events, the science fair, the skating recital in December that Maya has been discussing since September. He sits close to the front. He claps loudly and doesn't make a production of it. No grand gestures, no speeches, no performative rebuilding. He just shows up and he stays for all of it. That is not the same as redemption, but I know the difference between a man pretending to change and a man working to make it real. Jeremy is working. That is going to have to be enough for a while. Rhonda is harder. Rhonda is civil and present, and on her better days she is genuinely making an effort, and some weeks that honestly has to be enough. The counselor told Jeremy, and Jeremy told me during one of the quiet phone calls that have slowly resumed between us, that Rhonda had constructed her entire sense of what a family was supposed to be around one child, and had never found a way to expand that shape to include another. I don't know if that explanation holds. I don't know if it matters. What I know is that the Cass report is sitting in Elaine Fisk's filing cabinet on King Street West in Hamilton, and it will stay there for exactly as long as everyone keeps their word. They spent $14,000 making one child feel like the only one who counted. I spent more than that, making sure the other one never forgets she was always worth every single bit of it. And that is the whole of it.